It's your host Josh here back with another episode. Today we have a new guest. It is Mr. Phillip Tran. Phillip, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Josh. Texas won this weekend, so can't ask for much more than that.
Hey, that's all right. This is Phillip's first time on. Like I mentioned, he is a college football guru. I'm thankful for you coming on here today. But we had some good games over this first weekend, especially just kind of some shocking results. That Colorado upset over TCU. I know we were just about to talk about that. That's just unreal. I mean, Deion Sanders coming in first game in Power Five conference and upsetting a reigning college football playoff team, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, credit where credit was due last year at TCU, but that was probably one of the flukiest one-off, one in a million type teams you're going to see here, with other teams being bad and just luck of the draw for them. I mean, how many of their games were less than 5 points last year coming down to the wire? So it was pretty fluky, and Duggan was an amazing quarterback. So I don't think that TCU loss shocked me. I didn't think Colorado was going to play that well. I thought they were definitely going to cover that 20.5-point spread. But TCU is not a Power 5 team. I mean,
No.
Texas and Oklahoma moving next year. Big 12 is not a Power 5 conference.
Well, dude, it's not that far, but it's something to talk about because the Big 12 had a really bad showing. I mean, Baylor was 28.5-point favorites and they lost, right? I mean, that's pathetic. I mean, having two 20 plus point favorites lose in week one for the Big 12 is not good, especially, when you have, two of the stronger teams, probably the two strongest teams in the conference. Definitely the strongest team in the conference in Texas and probably the second one in OU leaving. You need to have somebody else stepping up. It might be Cincinnati. I mean, it's probably not going to, but Emory Jones looked really good for Cincinnati. I was at the game. I left at halftime because I was starving and didn't want to pay like $15 for a pretzel, but it was, I think 42-7 at half. Emory Jones looked good. Xavier Henderson looked good. The little Florida connect there, but Texas failed to cover. I did notice that. But you guys go with Quinn Ewers, and he looked pretty solid as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, Quinn was highly rated out of high school. Great Texas football high school powerhouse that he came out of South Lake Carroll outside of Dallas, but nothing he did last year impressed me. And again, to yesterday, nothing impressed me. And I don't know if that's him. I mean, the thing that I took away from yesterday's game was Sark's play calling is pretty vanilla. It was the same last year where nothing was too spectacular. I don't know if that's because Quinn doesn't understand the offense still or isn't capable of executing it. But, yeah, Quinn did not impress me at all. I'd be happy to see Malik Murphy or Arch Manning come in by the time conference play rolls out.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, is I think a lot of people not in that Texas locker room are expecting Arch Manning, the big Manning name, right, to be that backup quarterback. And Malik Murphy came in and played for a few snaps when Ewers went out. So that's kind of just going to be something to monitor. Does Arch Manning jump at all? And at what point does he start to go with Malik Murphy over Ewers at any point? It could be looking at like a Caleb Williams or Spencer Rattler situation at OU a few years ago, right? When Caleb Williams really had his coming out party, he wasn't even the starter. Spencer Rattler was, and then Rattler really had a few weeks where he was fumbling the ball, throwing interceptions, just terrible decision making. And then Caleb Williams came in, played for 2 weeks, and it was like, yeah, we're not taking him out. So, Ewers is the exact same as Rattler, right? Extremely highly rated, but has not lived up to the hype yet. But we do get a perfect case scenario for him to prove that this week with you guys taking on Bama. Last year, in all honesty, if Ewers stays healthy, I think you beat him comfortably. And
I mean,
you get the revenge.
He played fantastically last year. Everything was going right for him before Nick Saban decided to take him out of the game. But I don't know really what to expect this weekend. If I was anybody else, I saw the line open at 7.5. I'd probably take Alabama at home minus 7.5. I just don't see Texas winning this game. And I didn't watch the Alabama game this past weekend, but it seemed like Jalen Milroe had a pretty complete control of the offense. Looking at the stats afterwards, he had a couple of touchdowns, both rushing and passing. So a lot of Texas's plays this past weekend were slow developing against Rice, and that might cut it against Rice. But against a defense with athletes of the caliber of Alabama, it's not going to fly, especially on the road like that. If Quinn Ewers starts shaky, it's game over.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And you mentioned, Texas's offense kind of taking a little bit to develop for some plays. I want to talk about USC real quick because USC obviously reigning, Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb Williams. You have the number one receiver in the class in Zachariah Branch, who is a dog. And already, I mean, he looks like Jordan Addison out there. He's wearing number one and everything. But this offensive line for USC is just horrendous. And if Caleb Williams wasn't like the best scrambler we have in college football this year, he'd be getting sacked like 8 to 10 times a game. I mean,
Yeah.
so and that's against like San Jose State. So if you want to make this case for, I mean, they're ranked 6th right now, for USC to get to this level of we're going to become that elite competing for a national title team, it's going to be hard if you face a defense like Bama or Georgia or any of these powerhouses that legitimately have, like you mentioned, athletes. I mean, Caleb Williams isn't going to be able to scramble out of 3, 4, rushers every time. I think back to the Super Bowl 3 years ago with the Buccaneers against the Chiefs when Mahomes had like half a second to throw the ball every time. It doesn't matter how good you are at scrambling, you can't get away from 3 defensive linemen. So his offensive line looks that bad to me. But I will say, Caleb Williams and Zachariah Branch, that's a brutal pairing right now to have to play against. But the Pac-12 is going to be interesting to monitor. Obviously, Bo Nix now at Oregon, they had a good week. They put up 80.
That Doug was doing a lot of push-ups I saw on social media.
Oh, whoever they played, I can't remember who they played. Their coach was crying. Did you see that?
I did not. All my social media attention was looking at that duck doing his like 1,000 push-ups or whatever number he got up to.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. He's got to have a mean chest like this week. Surely he took today off, right? Like,
surely. Can I circle back to USC real quick? I mean,
yeah.
I haven't been able to watch USC personally these past 2 weeks, but one thing that I do know is that Lincoln Riley is an amazing play caller, and he knows how to work with what he's got. So maybe he's going to recognize that the offensive line isn't as great as it should be. And like you mentioned, he's got 2 fantastic weapons there with the quarterback and wide receiver duo that have clearly been clicking right at the start. And you can see it. He made Heisman Trophy, or not Heisman Trophy winners, but Heisman Trophy candidates, first-round NFL draft picks out of 3 consecutive transfer quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
So I think he's an expert at knowing what he has and getting the best out of them. We saw that at Oklahoma year in, year out. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that USC offensively, they possess the capabilities to put up points against anybody. But then it also brings up the question of the Lincoln Riley defense. That's always the same thing, right? Is we're going to outscore you. And our defense is just going to hopefully get a few stops this game because they're giving up, I think, 28 points to San Jose State. If you're giving up 28 to San Jose State, you're going to be giving up 40 plus to the powerhouses when you get to, Pac-12 championship and college football playoff. So, I mean, it's still early. This USC team is plenty talented. Obviously, you have the Heisman candidates, which we're getting into some Heisman predictions here in a little bit. Speaking of a Heisman candidate, Jordan Travis, dude, for Florida State, looked wonderful last night against LSU. LSU might be the most overrated team in the country. I really didn't understand why they were ranked 5th in the nation. But I tell you what, this Florida State team looked legit. And they got my guy Keon Coleman from Michigan State, and he had a pretty good debut game last night, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could have saw it, but I think Florida State, kind of going to what your point right there, might have been the most underrated team in the country coming into this year. I mean, I know the ranking was 8 yesterday, but from what I remember last year, they were one of the most fun teams to watch, especially with Jordan Travis at the wheel. So I'm expecting big things out of them. I did take Clemson to win the ACC because they're Clemson, but I'm really nervous about Florida State.
Yeah. Well, it's just the weapons that they have around Jordan Travis as well. Obviously, Keon Coleman, like we just mentioned, was a dog at Michigan State. A great transfer, puts up 3 touchdowns in his first game there. You have Johnny Wilson, who's, I mean, last year was one of the top receivers in the nation. This year is the same way. And then obviously Trey Benson's, one of the best running backs in the nation as well. So plenty of star talent around a Jordan Travis. And last night there were 2 throws he made that were like, what in the world? Like, I mean, the one was like a bubble screen that he pump faked and then threw, and he threw it directly to the LSU defender. And then he had another one that was like at his own like 10-yard line, and he just lobbed it over the middle. That one didn't get picked, luckily for him. But So a few slip ups from him, but I mean, you just hung 45 points on the top five team in the nation.
Yeah.
I think
And at
the
the end of the
offense is going to be
day,
fine.
LSU is an SEC defense. Say what
Mm-hmm.
you want about their ranking, but they got some physical boys up front. They recruit some strong boys, so their defense is always going to be pretty stout for an ACC team to come in there and put up points like that.
Absolutely. Speaking of teams that didn't really perform well, too, OSU looked pretty rough. Not pretty rough as being, I think, kind of generous too. I mean, this quarterback situation, we all knew it was going to be a drop off from the Heisman candidate and CJ Stroud, right? But I didn't think McCord would look this bad.
I wasn't able to watch this game, but I was tracking the scoreline the entire way, and I was just like, "This is Indiana, guys. You are Ohio State. I don't know what the deal is."
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that really stood out to me too is that Marvin Harrison Jr., best receiver in the nation, undoubtedly. I mean, he's being talked about like he's the best receiver prospect ever, right? I mean, he's getting an insane amount of hype. He was targeted twice in the first half of this game. Twice. Like, if you have a receiver this good and you have a quarterback that it's his first start, why are you not just saying, give Marvin Harrison the ball? Like, give MHA the ball, especially when there's chemistry. I mean, they played high school together. You'd like to think that would be the one guy that he would be turning to, right? Is saying, okay, I'm kind of confused right now. I'm fine at MHA no matter what. But I would not be surprised to see Ryan Day have to make a decision here on quarterback because Kyle McCord definitely did not look good in that week one. But staying in the Big Ten, I thought U of M did look pretty good.
Well, all I know is the game didn't go over, so that's the only thing I watched. Now, I'm assuming they ran the ball a lot with the talent that they brought back last year. That's why I was on the under actually in that game. But how did they look in terms of running the ball? They were just probably more physical than Eastern Carolina.
I mean, it's the same thing that you typically see with this Harbaugh team, right? Is that I guess not a Harbaugh team for the next few weeks, but pretty much a Harbaugh team. By the way, did you see that stupid like tribute they did to him? Like
with
on the play. Yeah, it's like he didn't die. Like he's just out for a few games. Like
I'm fully against this Michigan always playing the victim card. I don't know what you are. You're one of the most historic teams in college football. I don't know about this random stuff where you're acting like the victim.
Yeah, and your coach is missing games against Eastern Carolina, Bowling Green. I think they miss Nebraska. I think he misses Nebraska. So if you're really worried about that one, but but I mean, it's just a typical Harbaugh team, though, is that we're dominating in the trenches. Offensive line will sweep your defensive line. We have two great running backs in Corum and Edwards that are just going to run all over you. I think Corum only carried the ball like 10 times in the game, and he averaged like 7 yards per carry. I mean, so McCarthy, though, looked really good. He had a few that he hooked up with Roman Wilson on, and that chemistry looked good. McCarthy scrambled. He scrambled well. He had a few scrambling, throwing on the run for touchdowns. So he looked good. Again, granted, it's ECU, right? You better look good against them. But at the same time, look at the quarterbacks in here that didn't look good, right? I mean, your arch rival of Ohio State, Kyle McCord, looked really bad against IU. How much better is IU than ECU, right? They're better, but how much better? So I think Michigan's a team that I see almost locked into the college football playoff this year, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And if you said that Danny McCarthy played as good as he did, he was my biggest question mark for Michigan last year, and probably my biggest question mark for him coming into the game because I know how dominant they were on the ground last year. So if McCarthy can just put together decent games, it's going to be a fantastic football team. So to hear that, I have high hopes for Michigan this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their run defense last year was the best in the Big Ten as well. Obviously, losing Monty Smith, the enormous defensive tackle to the draft, first round pick to the Cowboys. That's a big loss, right? But either way, they're going to recruit well. They dominate the state of Michigan. As a Michigan State fan, I know that because we get none of them. It's kind of hard to watch, and we were hard to watch. Michigan State was. Noah Kim was all right at best. We really don't have we had 2 insane touchdown catches, though. Did you see either of them?
No, I just saw the highlight of one of them in the end zone.
Was it the one-hander?
Yeah, I think I saw that one.
There was that one, and then there was another one that was like just he just mossed him. It was 2 different guys, but that dude that had the one-hander, I think that was his first ever collegiate catch. I think so. Don't hold me to that, but I believe I remember seeing that was his first ever collegiate catch, one-hander while getting held down in the end zone for a touchdown. But dude, I'm looking at this for the college football playoff outlook, right? I see Georgia locked in. It's going to have to be really bad from Carson Beck, in all honesty, to not make the playoff. They just have enough weapons around them, and their defense is always so good. But at the same time, they're in the SEC, right? I mean, you could very easily lose to Alabama. Do they play Bama in the regular season this year? I do not know that.
Not entirely sure. It's a great question.
I can pull that up real quick, because if they do, I mean, you could very easily lose to Bama twice, right? And once in regular season, once in the SEC championship. Or would they not play in the SEC championship?
I mean, they would, because they're in different divisions of the SEC.
They are.
So.
Yep. Okay. Georgia does not play Alabama in the regular season this year. So Georgia, I mean, if you're undefeated going in and you lose to Bama, especially with the way the CFP loves the SEC, right, you're making it. Either way. So,
were you able to catch the Ole Miss game this weekend? I just saw them put up 1 billion points, and I'm like, if anything's there to challenge, clearly LSU might not be there to challenge Alabama this year. On a year that most people are considering is a down year for Bama coming in terms of their predictions. Ole Miss might be somebody to watch in the SEC West this year, I think.
Yeah. No, and I mean, Milroe looked good, don't get me wrong, but like, it's not what they've had. Like, he very easily in 5 weeks could be like, oh my gosh, this guy's a Heisman candidate, right? Like what they typically have. But you're looking at, I mean, past 2 years we had Bryce Young there, right? Who was unreal. I mean, before that, you're looking at like Jalen Hurts was there for a year, and then you had Tua Tagovailoa. Like, they've had so much talent at the quarterback position that Jalen Milroe seems like it's like, oh my gosh, like this is not the level we're at, even though I'm sure he's 5-star recruit, right?
Oh, I can tell you everything about Jalen Milroe real quick, just to circle back. Yeah. Former Texas commit. I think he's a Texas transfer. Really? It's either a hard commit and transferred after signing, or like switched on signing day. So Texas fans are pretty familiar with what Jalen Milroe is going to bring to the table at Texas, and he decided to take his talents to Alabama. So it'll be really interesting and fun to see that brought up, at least in the broadcast booth, and maybe on the field we'll see something like that. A little bit more edge to his game. Yeah,
looking at Georgia's schedule, by the way, they have Tennessee in week 12, second to last week at Tennessee. And that's the week after they play at home against Ole Miss. So the 2 of the final 3 weeks are very losable games. I mean, you're playing teams that are very capable of beating you. So that's going to be – but I fully expect them to be undefeated going into that there. But in my opinion, I see Georgia and Michigan as locks, in all honesty, into this into the college football playoff. I think it's like a 2-spot race. In all honesty, I think Florida State gets in there, because the ACC is easy to win, to be quite honest. It's a 1-game season. I mean, beat Clemson, cool, you're in. Yeah. So that's how but also for Clemson's sake, right? I mean, I know right now, I think they're losing to Duke. I have it on right here. That's commercial, but I think they're losing to Duke right now. So like, Clemson's the same way though. They can obviously do have to come away from this week with a win, but if you can beat Florida State, you might be in. So this college football playoff, I think the spots 3 and 4 in this final year of the 4-team playoff is going to be a big battle.
Yeah, because you didn't even introduce the Pac-12, and I'm gonna circle back to Texas one more time here. But my friend from last year, he was asking me on Saturday morning what I thought about the season and where I thought Texas football was headed this season, and I honestly gave him 12-0. I gave him 12-0 because nobody has talked about the Big 12 all offseason. I think we brought it up at the beginning with the struggles with TCU and Baylor. I didn't say Texas was going to be 12-0 because I thought we're better than every team. I just thought Texas was going to be 12-0 because every single team is worse than us. And I know Texas has their mishaps with teams that they should beat, but I think one of the big storylines for either Oklahoma or Texas is somebody can run the Big 12 and do it very easily and make it look very good, because I don't think the Big 12 is probably the least competitive conference this year.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, you look at the teams that could legitimately win a college football playoff game. You look at the Big Ten, you have Michigan and OSU, absolutely. You have Penn State could compete for one, right? You look at the ACC, you have Clemson, you have FSU. You look at the SEC, you have obviously plenty of them in Bama, in Georgia, in LSU. Yeah, you obviously have Ole Miss in there too, right? You have Tennessee in there. But Big 12 is like Texas, maybe Oklahoma, right? I mean, so it's definitely a down year for the Big 12, and it's the scary thing for the Big 12's sake is that your two teams that I just listed off are gone next year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is where also with the Pac-12, right? Pac-12 is plummeting. I mean, there's nobody there. Real quick, I want to touch on the Pac-12 too. Washington looks dangerous in there. They look very MPJ. Michael Penix Jr. is a dog. He slings the rock. Last year they threw the ball, I think, the third most times in all of college football, and that's just their scheme. And when you have a quarterback that makes the decisions that he makes, I think he had 400 yards ish. I think I have it right here. 450 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You have a quarterback that has the talent like that to do that. That's a dangerous team that come, college football playoff time could definitely make an impact. I mean, I expect the Pac-12 to put one team in college football playoff.
Absolutely. If they don't cannibalize themselves with regular season losses that just stack up on each other, and I don't know what the college football committee thinks about 2 lost teams in recent history, but I could definitely see them just tripping on themselves and eliminating the whole conference out. And that's why I like the Big 12 to send somebody there, because I think winning the Big 12 is so easy and you get a lot of style points doing it. But as you mentioned, the Pac-12 is going to be super exciting. I think Oregon State has got a good shot this year. Utah obviously looked very good against a Florida team that is made the worst hire in history with Billy Napier. But that Pac-12 is going to be fun, and I just hope that they don't trip on each other and like the champion of the Pac-12 ends up being a 2-loss, 3-loss team. Although they lost good teams, historically the college football playoff committee has shown that if you have more than 2 losses, you're not going to be in the playoffs. So
yeah, and I mean you touched on Utah looking good against Florida, and that was without Cam Rising. So, I mean, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. So obviously losing Kincaid's a big loss for that offense, but their offense looked fine without him. Yeah. So it's definitely going to be. I expect the Pac-12 to be pretty solid. Pac-12 is better than the Big 12 by I think quite a bit this year. And I think the Big 10 might. In all honesty, I think Big 10's kind of having a down year, but Michigan I think runs this Big 10 this year. All of my Ohio State friends probably hate to hear me say that. Ohio State is in a down year. They have a great receiver core. They have trouble with the quarterback position. And in all honesty, Michigan is just excellent this year. They've had their number the past few years, and I think I would not be surprised. Is it at the Big House this year?
I think it is. Yeah.
I want to say it is because 2 years ago I think it was. So I'm going to double check that real quick. But if it's at the Big House, dude, I could see. Yep, it is. I could see Michigan winning this game by like 21, 28 points. Like, realistically, because if you can't stop the run, good night. Good night.
Yeah, but how do you feel about your former coach Luke Fickell in Wisconsin? I mean, Iowa played bad against a bad Utah State team. I mean, they won, but not very comfortably. Nebraska and Minnesota looked awful. Northwestern, Rutgers, Northwestern is awful. So it's like Wisconsin can get to the Big Ten championship fairly easy and maybe injury-free and not having to use a lot of their resources to get there, and could surprise some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I thought when Fickell took the job is it sucks, right? I mean, he took this Cincinnati program to the highest it's ever been. And so it sucks to see him leave. But realistically, with the changes coming to this college football playoff of winner of the Big Ten, no matter what their record is, gets in, you're going to the Big Ten West where it's easy to win, right? I mean, you just listed it out. It's easy to win if you can recruit really at all. I mean, so you're going there. You're essentially in a 1-game playoff to make the college football playoff every year. Can you beat OSU? Can you beat Michigan one time? That's all you need to do, and you're in. So I understand it, but yeah, I mean they have Braylon Allen, who's one of the greatest running backs in the nation this year, and then they have the transfer Tanner Mordecai transfer from SMU. Is SMU or what is it?
It's SMU via Oklahoma, Oklahoma to SMU, but mainly known for his SMU stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny. He was probably the best quarterback in the AAC last year, and so Fickell leaves and brings the best quarterback in the AAC with him to Wisconsin. But yeah, Wisconsin's another team to monitor. I mean, I really don't think they beat Michigan. I don't necessarily see that, but in the future, I mean, Fickell could be building a powerhouse there. We saw what he did at Cincinnati in a short time here. I mean, absolutely could be taking that team to the next level.
So then what are you thinking right now then? If Wisconsin plays if you know for a fact Wisconsin's in the Big Ten title game against Michigan, what's the spread? 20.5?
See, that's where I don't – what does if Wisconsin plays Michigan next week, at a neutral site, I think it's 20.5 minimum. But with it
28 and a
being
half?
20.5 minimum,
Okay.
I could see anywhere between 20 and 25. But in a big game, big games typically get like shrunk, right? This line will go because they assume it's going to be closer. The game's going to be managed tighter. So in a Big Ten title game, I could see it being all the way down to like 14 to 17 range, in which I would probably be all over Michigan, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, realistically, Wisconsin could be great in the future, but they're just not there yet. Fickle in the first year, I don't think can go in and make that big of an impact. But dude, I'll tell you what, real quick about Cincinnati while we're talking about Fickle is we got a lot of transfers, right? Obviously, we have new quarterback and Emory Jones out from Arizona State and originally from Florida. And people forget that 2 years ago was starting over Anthony Richardson, was a top 10 NFL draft prospect, and is plenty talented. Went to the Arizona State team, had no receivers, had no offensive line, still was decent. Now he's with a team with a solid offensive line, with his old buddy Xavier Henderson from Florida, who they clearly showed that chemistry right away. And Corey Kiner, who, if he would have committed to Cincinnati right away, would have been the highest ranked recruit we've ever had. So the transfer from, I believe, LSU. So, look, this team's fine. The pass defense is the only issue, which unfortunately in college football nowadays, if you can't defend the pass, you're kind of screwed. The run defense is excellent, though. I mean, we have Dante Corleone, who's a first team, all preseason All-American. They call him the Godfather. If you had to snap a ball and block a dude named the Godfather, all I gotta say is good luck. That'd be hell. But look, it's gonna be a fun year. All I'm hoping for is that in either week 4 or week 5, whenever we play OU at home, I just want us to be undefeated there, so that It's like, if we win, we're ranked. That's all I want is to get that. By the way, Clemson just took the lead 7-6. So, but so realistically, let's get some Heisman predictions here. So if you had to choose one guy you think you're going to win, and then maybe one sleeper to win as well, who would you go with here?
Yeah, this is where my lack of college football this year, I haven't watched that much, is coming into effect. But I'd probably go Caleb Williams just because of how much of respect that I put in Lincoln Riley. I absolutely love him as a play caller and as an offensive coordinator. So I know Caleb Williams is going to put up stats. And then I'll probably go sleeper, maybe a running back, Corum out of Michigan. Whoever carries the ball more there, I think or Donovan Edwards. I think they're going to have a pretty good say in the conversation. Those two guys are probably my pick.
Yeah, well, Corum has like the factor of like, how many times do you see a quarterback that they're blowing somebody out and he just doesn't throw the ball?
Yeah.
Because they're blowing him out. Corum, you would run the ball. And with an offensive line, when you're playing these lesser teams, right, when you go play BG in a couple weeks, you're going to thrash them in the trenches. And Corum's going to be like, running through truck-sized holes every single time he touches the ball. So he's going to have plenty of opportunities. The only issue would be if they decide to run a two-man backfield with him and Edwards. But if he dominates the backfield, dude, last year, if he wouldn't have gotten injured, I think he is a Heisman candidate over Max Duggan, in all honesty. But it's hard not to go Caleb Williams, right? After seeing what he did last year, seeing what Lincoln Riley consistently does to quarterbacks, and seeing what he's done in 2 games this year already, it's hard to not go with him. Dude, I saw a comparison for him. It was just kind of funny. They said he's like Patrick Mahomes' vision and playmaking with Lamar Jackson's speed and Aaron Rodgers' arm strength. I'm like, you guys are just building a dream quarterback right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what he is. And like I said, like we both mentioned with Lincoln Riley there calling the shots, sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, and especially when you bring in the issue was like, okay, you take Addison out of that offense. Does he have weapons? But if he's got this chemistry with Zachariah Branch, which I don't know if he goes by Zach or not, but everything I've seen is Zachariah, because it'd be a lot easier to just call him Zach Branch. But with Zachariah Branch is, if you can continue to develop that. They also had the number 2 wide receiver in the country, I believe, that committed there. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm going to find it real quick, though, because where is it here? Where is it? Wide receiver. Malachi Lemon is his name. He's 5'11", 180 is what he was out of high school. But he was the overall number 13, and Zachariah Branch was the overall number 7 in the class of 2023. So plenty talented. I mean, plenty talented. And you'd like to think as the season goes on, right, those guys just get more and more comfortable in the college football setting. So I'm sticking with you. I'm going with Caleb Williams as my pick. Michael Penix Jr. is going to be my sleeper pick here. I think he's legitimately in an offense that could throw the ball 55 times a game, and they're cool with that. They're up by 14, start of the fourth quarter. They're probably throwing the ball 2 of the 3 downs, just because that's what they do. So I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to have the volume to do it. As far as his receiver talent, I don't know if it's good enough, but playing in the Pac-12, defense is optional. You're going to be just fine.
Absolutely. I have one question then. Do you think any of the Colorado boys, with the amount of hype surrounding Prime, I mean, they have to do well, obviously, but both of them are insane athletes.
Yeah, though they are. I mean, the three-headed monster of Travis Hunter, obviously Shedeur Sanders, right, was spectacular. 510 yards, 4 touchdowns, game 1. That's unreal. Travis Hunter is just such a unique player. Puts up 11 catches on offense, an interception on defense, played 129 snaps, I think was the official count. That's unreal. And then Dylan Edwards, too, running back that, I think, a touchdown. He had like 3 touchdowns on like 9 or 10 touches. I mean, in significant, volume there too. Over 150 total yards. So great trio of guys. I think Shedeur Sanders is really the only guy that could, because of how much the Heisman actually is like pretty much just the best quarterback in the nation award, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, all 3 of those guys would be sleeper picks. I think Shedeur Sanders, realistically, also, you got your dad as your coach, right? If it's week 7 and now you're starting to be talked about in the Heisman, right? You might throw the ball 45, 50 times this game because Pops wants to see you get a Heisman. So I think realistically they have to be they have to go like 8-4 at the worst to provide a Heisman like trophy winner. I mean, you're not going to see a Heisman trophy winner on the 4-8 team. You're just not going to see it. But it is something to be to watch though, because it could be kind of fun to see. First year there, prime time comes in, and there's plenty of hype there, like you mentioned. I mean, they are getting plenty of hype, and they play USC in a few weeks too. So we all know Lincoln Riley's defense is optional. So that could be a 95 to like 92 game, in all honesty. But so college football playoff here as we wrap this up. So give me your 4 college football playoff teams right now. And then we'll probably do this in another 3 weeks, and we'll see how much it's changed in those 3 weeks.
Right now I'd probably give you Michigan 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, and then I'd give you a team from the Pac-12 and USC 4. Okay. Actually, I would take your 4th. I'm going to change it to Florida State 4. I just think the Pac-12 is going to beat themselves up, and we've seen historically if you're a 2-loss team, you're not going to make it into the playoffs. So, just repeat that. I think Michigan 1, Georgia 2, Texas 3, and Florida State 4 would be my predictions.
Okay. I'm with you 1 and 2. Absolutely. Michigan, Georgia 1 and 2. I think it's interchangeable. It doesn't matter at all. And then realistically, I have Florida State in there at 3 or 4. And then I'll say Florida State there at 3. My 4th spot is between Texas and USC. And I think Washington realistically could elevate themselves into this too. Ohio State's a team that could come into this. If Ohio State were to just figure out the quarterback issue, this team would be really good. But you can't just – that's a lot easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But if you just trade for Caleb Williams, then realistically, I'm going to put USC in here at the 4. So I have, USC and Michigan matchup, and then a Georgia and FSU matchup. I think that would be really fun. And last year, in all honesty, we saw great college football playoff semis. The national championship was garbage. I turned it like you could turn it off at halftime and you would miss nothing other than Max Duggan just looking like he was embarrassed. Like, So hopefully we get better college football playoffs. But this has been pretty good so far. So we will probably meet again in a few weeks. Not probably. We will meet again in a few weeks and talk about some more. Obviously we got the Texas Bama game in there, right? The Texas OU games in I think 5 or 6 weeks yet as well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of big matchups. OSU plays Notre Dame in a few weeks. That'll be on there. So there's plenty of huge games coming up, which will be pretty fun. Then we'll compare after we said Caleb Williams and Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr. and Blake Corum. They'll all three plummet down the Heisman rankings now as soon as we say that they're going to win it. But
yeah. Do you have any more time? I'd like to just bring up Miami, Texas A&M as a matchup I'm curious about next week. Jimbo is on the hot seat. Obviously, Miami has been bad for a while. And I've heard Cristobal really might turn it around. So I'm very excited to watch A&M and Miami play next week.
And you are a huge A&M hater, right, as being a student of UT. So you are probably hoping to see Miami just thrash them and see Jimbo gone, right?
I'm honestly hoping to see like a 6-3 ball game and both teams look absolutely awful. So
okay, so you're not okay. Okay, fair enough. Can't argue that there. But I tell you what, Phillip, I appreciate you coming on, man. It will be I will definitely have you on here shortly because it is just fun talking college football with you. But thank you for coming on, my man. And until next time.